So really looking forward to today, right? Because we're going to
so
hear
excited.
as you mentioned, some incredible people. Up top, we're going to introduce our first guest in just a minute. This is about what we tell a lot of our stories from, right? The basic science, the discovery that goes, and then we're going to hear from some folks who make all this possible and are uniquely committed to sustainability. Or they're walking the walk, to storytelling. They're talking the talk. And they're supporting Planet Forward, and we'll hear why and all about that.
Very excited.
Yeah?
I can't wait. I'm really excited. Well, you were waiting for me because I had to run upstairs. My son is here. He's on spring break.
Where is he?
He wouldn't come. He's upstairs in my office, but he's doing I told y'all about a science fair project, right? And so I was so excited for Dr. Stofan's conversation. I was like, you have to come downstairs. The Undersecretary of Research is here. And he was like, what? So I'm working on my 12-year-old. He's 12.
Uh-huh. Okay. So good luck, by the way.
Thank you.
You have a few good years ahead of you.
Thank you.
So let's introduce our first guest. We are incredibly honored and privileged and pleased to have Dr. Ellen Stofan with us today. She is, as Dr. Cheers mentioned, the Undersecretary for Science and Research at the Smithsonian Institution. When you hear Smithsonian Institution, what do you think about? Shout it out. What do you hear when you hear Smithsonian? What do you think? What?
Science.
Science. What else? Museums. What else? NASA. Okay. Yes, all of the above. She oversees the Smithsonian's Science Research Centers, as well as National Air and Space Museum, National Museum of Natural History, the National Zoo, the Conservation Biology Institute, and the Smithsonian Libraries and Archives, something like 800 scientists worldwide. Her focus includes the institution's Our Shared Future, Life on a Sustainable Planet initiative, and the Smithsonian research that's focused on unlocking the mysteries of the universe, from black holes and all kinds of things beyond Earth.
Which is amazing. You have the other card.
Oh, I have your card.
I know.
Here,
You gotta give me that.
have that.
Thank you.
Read that. Uh-huh.
Which is good. See, we've been practicing. Previously, Dr. Stofan is director of the National Air and Space Museum. Has anyone been there? They just renovated. It's amazing. And she was the first woman to hold that position. She served as NASA's chief scientist and advised long-range human exploration of Mars. You guys probably heard the rover and some other stuff. I'm so excited. I get to nerd out today, which is great. Her research is focused on the geology of Venus, Mars, and Saturn's moon, Titan, as well as this other planet we hang out on called Earth.
Yeah, which we're doing a really good job with. Ladies and gentlemen, should we welcome her, right?
I think we should.
Dr. Ellen Stofan. Thank you. Why don't you sit in the middle?
Okay.
Dr. Cheers, why don't you sit there? Welcome. Thank you so much for coming over.
Really happy to be here. Thank you.
So one of the things we want to talk about, and by the way, we have a few pictures too, which we'll share. And we were talking about this over coffee. Is how many are storytellers in the room?
Got a couple.
Okay.
Yep.
How many are communicators in the room? I should see every hand up, please.
Right.
Okay.
Everyone.
But you can't communicate what you don't know or what you don't have, and so you provide that basic science. So just give people a very quick overview of Smithsonian science and what your world is all about.
A lot of people, I heard all of you responding when we asked about the Smithsonian, and thankfully many of you talked about science, but people don't realize we have over 800 scientists at the Smithsonian doing everything from working on imaging, the first image of the event horizon of a black hole. You guys probably saw it on the front of every newspaper. It looks like an orange donut. That was the Smithsonian. We have an X-ray telescope in orbit called Chandra. We have the pandas. I think some of you might have heard about the pandas. So we have so much science going on, but when I came into this job about 5 years ago, I'm like, how do we talk about this? Because it's so broad. And I'll be honest with you, we brought in a couple consultants and they came to me after I paid the money and they said, wow, you guys do a lot of stuff and it's really broad. And you're like, thanks for that, thanks for that.
You clearly got your money's worth out of it.
So we're working with some great folks now. But this idea of how do you talk about science? And so one of the things we really started thinking about was how a lot of the science we do is really focused on how do we make life on this planet sustainable? How do we find solutions where people and nature come together that work for both people and nature? How do we restore species? How do we restore ecosystems, but do it in a way that the communities that live in or amongst those ecosystems can have economic benefit. If you come up with solutions that don't benefit the local people, they're not going to stick, and we need solutions that stick.
Solutions, and that's what these stories are about, right? Ideas, solutions, innovations to move the planet forward. Before we go to a couple of picks, just give people a little bit. Your story is so interesting because you're kind of like what did you call yourself? A NASA nerd?
A NASA brat.
A NASA brat.
So my dad worked for NASA, and when I was growing up, I knew I wanted to be a scientist. And I picked up rocks all the time, and my husband will still say, do we have to have rocks in every room of the house? And the answer to that is yes. Yeah, obviously.
Clearly.
Yeah. So,
You have rocks in your house, Imani?
I have a 12-year-old, so I got a bunch of stuff.
yes, exactly. But when I was growing up in the 1960s, I actually never thought about working for NASA, which I ended up doing because everybody at NASA looked like my dad. White guy with the crew cut and the skinny tie. Not me. And I actually, frankly, wasn't really clear what an engineer did. But we got National Geographic at home. And so I would see Jane Goodall on the cover, and I would see Mary Leakey on the cover, and I'm like, women are crushing it. They're out there crushing it right now, pushing the boundaries of science, so I'm gonna do something like that. But when I was about 14, my dad was in charge of launching the first 2 Viking landers to Mars, the first time the US landed on Mars. And they had a program for the NASA kids that were down there. And the scientists from the mission came and talked about how exploring Mars would help us understand how the Earth worked, help us understand the origins of life. And there was this guy, his name was Carl Sagan. And he was one of the scientists that was talking. And I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And that's what I did.
And that's what you did. That's what you did.
So let me see if I can advance the slide. I'm pushing the button and I'm not seeing the slide go.
That part's not my job.
There we go.
Boom.
Imani, what do you see there?
Oh my goodness. Complexity. I see a perfect crescent of the Earth. I'm assuming this is from the moon.
This is from Artemis. So this is one
Not
of the
Artemis
new
2,
images
Artemis 1.
that
Who
came
followed
from
Artemis 2?
Artemis 2. Oh, that.
Who thought it was a cool thing?
It was amazing.
We actually have a scientist, Erica Jawan, who's at the National Air and Space Museum. She's a member of the Artemis science team. So we are involved in Artemis. But I thought it would be really fun to start with this image because you think of, we're talking about science communication. Why did this story grab the public? I was actually surprised, I will say, because we've had astronauts now up every day on the International Space Station. We've learned how to live in space. There are always people, every once in a while, spot the station, get the app, watch the space station go over. And yet most of the public is like, yawn. And yet Artemis captured our imagination. And why? It was personable. Those 4 people were having fun. You could see they were having fun. We were exploring. We were doing something interesting. But they talked about it in a way that inspired people, excited people, and brought people together. And of course, when you see this image of the Earth, this pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan said, hanging in the sky, you can't help but be moved by it.
It's interesting, Imani, I'm thinking about the conversations we had yesterday and heard from Kyle at YouTube about what works.
Absolutely.
Authenticity, bringing people in, and hearing you talk about how the Artemis astronauts spoke to people. It's like making that connection.
They were personable. Their personalities were able to be displayed in a way that captured audiences that were far more diverse than they were different.
Yeah.
Was Isaiah interested in Artemis too?
He was interested in the one clip that I showed him of one of the astronauts moisturizing himself. And Isaiah's like, what is that? I was like, we're a Black household. We believe in all of the butters, shea butter, cocoa butter, and so when he was like moisture, and I was like, look, see, even in space, he is not gonna be ashy. He is not gonna be ashy in space. That's not what we're doing. And I reminded him to go put on lotion.
Okay. Okay, what's this?
So another mission the Smithsonian has been involved in is OSIRIS-REx. And I don't know if many of you have heard of OSIRIS-REx. It's a NASA mission that went down onto the surface of the asteroid Bennu, grabbed a to me about the results from Bennu is we're always trying to answer this fundamental question. Is there life elsewhere in the universe? Mm-hmm. And how did we come to be? You know, why is the Earth this wonderful habitable planet? Not any of the others in our solar system really are. And what was really exciting, we knew there were amino acids in interstellar clouds, and we knew they've been found in cometary material and asteroid material, and asteroids and comets are the building blocks of planets. What was exciting about the results from Bennu was we found all the different amino acids that help form life here on Earth. So asteroids and comets are really what delivered, you know, the origins of us to this planet. And so that science, that sample that came back from Bennu has really helped move our understanding of life on Earth forward. The other thing that was getting further into the nerdiness, there were minerals in veins through the asteroid that indicated at one point there was liquid water on the surface. It was probably a larger body. You put amino acids together with water, and you've probably got chemistry that's proceeding towards life. So again, thinking that by the time asteroids were delivering material to the early Earth, it could have been a lot further along chemically than we had previously thought. So totally new science.
Whoa.
That's amazing.
Where's that asteroid come from?
So the asteroids are material that was left over when the solar system formed. Mm-hmm. So when you have a solar system forming, you have a star explosion, you have material that's put out. And then some of the material, silicates, iron, heavier metals, condense into rock as they cool. That rock then collides and collides and collides, and that's how you build up planets.
OSIRIS-REx is 2025?
Yes.
This is 2028?
Yes. So it's a cycle of carbon fluids, carbon-based fluids. So the idea, and so Titan becomes really intriguing, because again, think back to Bennu, all those amino acids that led to life have been delivered everywhere in our solar system. And when they interacted with water, we know you started getting the chemistry that proceeds towards life. What if there's no water? What if they're interacting with a hydrocarbon fluid like methane? Would you get life? Would you not? Would it be life as we know it, or would it be life as we don't know it? So Titan is a place we go to understand what are the limits of life in our solar system. And why we care about this is we want to know if there's life beyond our solar system, in the galaxy, out in the universe. So Titan is going to help us understand what are the limits of life.
So I think you have the coolest job on planet Earth, because you not only go from that, where we're looking for life, to this.
Aww. So this is Lin Mai. And
the baby is.
The baby.
Yes.
Adorable, adorable. On Earth Day, she will be revealed to the public, so you'll be able to see her at the National Zoo starting on Earth
So you're getting a sneak
Day.
preview here, folks.
Yes. Awesome.
She is now about 2 months old. She weighs 440 pounds. She weighed 300 pounds when she was born. And I will say, elephants have to go uphill and then turn 90 degrees to come out. So her mother, maybe not surprisingly, actually rejected her.
Really?
So yeah, her mother rejected
post
her.
yesterday. She was aggressive to her, so they've had to have elephant aunties.
Right?
That's what they call
That's
them.
not her mother there.
No, that's her auntie, Shwarma, who helps take care of her. Mm-hmm. And luckily, this elephant has never had a calf before, but from the beginning, when they put Lin Mai in with her, and Lin Mai fell asleep, Shwarma came over and put her trunk on Lin Mai and stayed there while she was sleeping. But as
Maternal instincts, I love it.
really
You're
sweet.
making the room melt here.
But
She's like,
as a consequence, we're having to bottle feed her because again, her mother rejected her.
Right.
And to say, I don't want to make it out too bad. A lot of first-time mothers do this in the wild. A lot of babies in the wild from a first-time mother die. That's nature. In an elephant herd, you usually have other elephants, maybe other calves in the herd, so someone might adopt a rejected baby, and so there can be outcomes. This was our first baby in 25 years, and we weren't willing to let anything happen to her. So we are bottle feeding her formula from Australia. The US formula didn't agree with her. We're importing formula from Australia for her.
Okay.
She has to have a
No
bottle.
tariffs on that, I hope.
She has to have a bottle every 2 hours
Okay.
for the first year of her life. And these bottles are like this
I was
big,
gonna
and
say
she
they're
glugs
massive.
it.
Yeah, I was
She
saying, yeah.
glugs it
Like a
down.
couple gallons.
And I will
Sure.
say, because I've been using my executive privilege, and I've been going over to see her just about every week because it's like my happy place.
And then there are these guys.
Yay.
You know, for those of you like me who in some of your stress moments you watch panda videos,
Is that what you do in your stress moments?
I do. I mean, if you haven't
Puppies.
watched panda videos, they're the goofiest animals. You think, how has evolution allowed these animals to still, they fall down, they do somersaults, they're eating bamboo and they just fall over. They're so cute. The National Zoo really is part of something it's animal diplomacy, right? So we've had pandas now for over 50 years, an agreement from China, we bring pandas in. We keep the pandas, usually we have a 10-year agreement with China to bring pandas in. And what's been amazing over the history of this program is we've learned how to artificially inseminate, how to breed pandas. Pandas had necked down to a really small number of the animals. They're only found in China. But because of the partnership that China has had with zoos around the world, but especially with our zoo, pandas have moved from being endangered to being threatened because we've been able to breed so many pandas and then a lot of them are being reintroduced into the wild. And I got to go over to China and see where they have some sort of test areas where they'll put pandas, baby pandas with their mother for a year. And then if they thrive, they'll go ahead and relocate that panda into a more remote region. And the rangers who monitor the pandas wear panda suits so that they don't get acclimatized to people. And
That's awesome.
it was really cute, really cute. CNN has a great story on it that if you want to see it, you can
I want a
Google
panda
it.
suit.
But it's they're really engaging bears. They squeak. They make the funniest noises. So come visit our pandas. They're very lively, especially early in the morning.
Okay.
If you come first thing in the morning, they're usually outside doing their goofy thing.
I'm obsessed.
So what's interesting about your work and the research as you mention it, is it's not just a zoo and taking care of animals, it's researching them and repopulating them where you can. And this is an active project, bison on the top, black-footed ferret on the bottom. Tell us about that.
So we partner with an organization out in Montana called American Prairie. Most of you know the American Prairie ecosystem was largely destroyed in the western United States. In this area of Montana, between the late 1890s and about 1940, every mammal over 40 pounds was wiped out. If you think at one point in the United States, there were tens of millions of bison. We don't actually know how many. We don't know what the natural range of a bison is because we literally killed most of them before we really studied them. Luckily, there was a small herd of bison left. There were some bison in Canada that left, and we've been able to bring the population of bison back to somewhat health. What's really interesting is out in American Prairie, they're saying, can we combine public lands with land that's bought up by a conservation and try to recreate 1 million acres of a prairie habitat? The Smithsonian is the science partner, so as the bison come back onto the land, we monitor the bison, we measure the effects the bison are having. Bison are ecosystem engineers, so they go out, they actually don't spend a lot of time at rivers the way cattle do. So when you put bison on the land, all of a sudden the riverbanks start to be less eroded, trees come back. When the trees come back, the fish come back to the river, insects come back, birds come back. So just bringing bison onto land brings the ecosystem back. Black-footed ferrets, we breed those here at the Conservation Biology Institute out in Front Royal, Virginia. We've been reintroducing those with partners out into the prairie. You need prairie dogs, you need black-footed ferrets, which have kind of a relationship with each other. And again, those help turn over the soil, they are also ecosystem engineers. So bringing these iconic species back, and what we see is when you bring back a couple key species, everything else starts to heal.
Ellen, I want to ask you this. One of the proud parts of Planet Forward is our Indigenous Student Correspondent Program. How is this work holding hands with tribal knowledge, cultural knowledge? How are you partnering with Indigenous and tribal communities to do this work?
We do. There's a whole series of tribal reservations along what's called the High Line, along the boundary kind of between Montana and Canada. And we had scientists that just went out there, and it took years. They went out to the tribal nations, they sat down with the people and said, what do you need? Tell us your stories. Tell us what you value. Because again, as I said in the beginning, if we don't work with those communities and understand what they want, we can helicopter in, drop some idea on them and leave. It's not going to stick. Of course, what we found out was bison, swift fox that we've also reintroduced. These species were key to the culture of those tribal nations. They wanted these species to come back. They mourned the loss of them because they were so important to them culturally. We actually have scientists now that are teaching in some of the community colleges on the tribal nations. We're working with those tribal nations. Some of the people that started out as interns on our projects are now like the deputy head. Our aim is to eventually leave and have all the people who are in charge of this project be from the local tribes that live there. Because again, that's how solutions stick. That's how you bring ecosystems back, is you work with communities, with what they want, not what you want.
Well, are you also actually partnering and actually taking advantage of tribal knowledge and native knowledge and culture, and not just imposing Western science? Because it was Western aggression that took these bison out and butchered the herd and the people who lived there.
The hard thing is, and what was a real learning issue for me, was I'm all about scale, 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 scale. I mean, we all know, right? We've got climate change happening. We have incredible biodiversity loss. And so you see something happening that's successful, and my mind is instantly, how do you scale this? How do you scale? We're going to bigger this. We're going to make it giant. And when you see the time that it takes to gain trust with partners, to find solutions that work between partners, this is slow work. And you can try to start applying that. So a lot of the approach we're using now is, how do we partner with other organizations? Because our scientists can't be everywhere. How do we work with the Nature Conservancy? How do we work with Conservation how do we reach out to all the other organizations that frankly tend to each kind of be doing their thing? And how do we work together in partnership, because that's how we're going to scale.
So speaking of partners, one of our partners is the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, right? Forestry is the middle name. And you're working in the forest, so tell us what we're seeing here.
So a lot of people don't know that in about 1923, I'm getting the date wrong, the President of the United States asked the Smithsonian to go down to Panama to document the biodiversity of Panama, because the Panama Canal was being built. And they realized, even at the time, we're doing something crazy to this ecosystem. We should go down and understand what lives down there. So the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute was founded. There's an island in the middle of the canal called Barrow, Colorado Island. It used to be a mountaintop. Now it's in the middle of Lake Gatun, which is the center part of the canal. It's the longest studied tropical rainforest in the world. It started a program at the Smithsonian that has evolved over the years called Forest Geo, where we have 25 to 50 hectare plots around the world in every forest type. And every 3 to 5 years, we measure every stem over 3 centimeters in that plot. Now, why were we doing this?
ESF, is that good?
Wow.
Why were we doing this? We wanted to understand how forests grow. We wanted to understand how forests die. When you think about it, it's not just important to understand how things live. You learn a lot from understanding why things don't live. So this was just an in-depth science project being done for scientists, science for, fundamental knowledge. Okay, when you do that for 30 years, and you happen to be doing it at a time when the climate is changing, temperatures are changing, precipitation is changing, what Forest Geo has become is a document of the effects of climate change in different ecosystems on forest systems. Incredible knowledge we've gained. But of course, during that time, all of a sudden we started really thinking about carbon. How much forests are pulling carbon out of the atmosphere? How does that work? How does it change over time? How is it changing with a changing climate? So we've actually started a project with other forest networks around the world called GeoTrees. So the funky multicolored image on the other side you see here is a LiDAR image. So we take images from ground-based LiDAR, drone-based LiDAR, we combine that with the in-situ measurements we're making of the trees, and we ground validate satellite measurements. We're working with space agencies from around the world, ESA, NASA, and say, can we validate your carbon measurements from space to create an open source validated system for carbon? Most of you have probably heard of carbon markets. Some of you might have bought carbon credits. The problem is a lot of the carbon credits now are done by companies. They have proprietary algorithms. There's been some scandals with some of the companies where people say, oh, it wasn't really, the trees weren't there, the forest wasn't there, the carbon measurements are correct. If you can't agree on what a dollar's worth, a dollar is worthless. So if we're going to have carbon markets that work, there has to be an underlying measurement system that everybody agrees to. That's what we're trying to do with GeoTrees. We have support from the Bezos Earth Fund, Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. We're starting in the tropics, but we're going to do a worldwide open source, free data for validating carbon.
And if Dr. Imani Cheers wanted access to that data, you said it's open source?
Yep, it's available over the web.
So anyone, our students, our researchers, journalists, can have access to all of your research.
When we get the system completely up and running, it's not completely
Right.
up and running yet, but
But
yeah,
it
when
will
we
be.
do, it
Yep.
will be. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing.
So to that point, here's a photo from 1926, I think it is, of fossils and bones and stuff like that. And then fast forward to this, which is an incredible collection. So the Smithsonian, you've been collecting data and specimens for ages, and because this is all open source too, for anybody in this room who wants to do research or tell a story, you could have access to this. So what is this, and how does that open source stuff work?
So a lot of people don't realize the Smithsonian actually started as a research institute, not a museum complex. But if you go back to, we're 200 years old. So if you go back to the 1850s, 1860s when we started, research institutes collected the natural world. That was how you were studying it. You were bringing in everything from around the world and saying, how does the natural world work? We've got to go out and collect. So we went from one building, the castle, full of specimens, to the current day where we have 148 million specimens at the Natural History Museum alone. We have about a third of the world's type specimens. Wow. So say a green parakeet, we might have the type specimen, the specimen that all other specimens in the world are referred back to. So this issue of it, and I will tell you, only 30% of this collection is digitally discoverable. So right now, we're doing some really fun projects. How do we get this digitized? How do we get it? How do we get the genetics of this collection? Because just think if you can apply AI models to these collections, what you're going to learn. It's going to be incredible.
So just staying on this for a minute, if somebody here, how many in the room again, hands up, have done a story or actually want to do a story for Planet Forward or anybody else? Okay, lots of people. So if somebody wanted access to this, where would they go? How would they get it?
They write to the museum and ask for access to the collections. Usually we give access, or if it's for a story, you go to our public relations department at that museum. But if it's for doing research, you go to the science, but otherwise you go to public relations and you say, I want to come do a story on the Smithsonian.
So you guys are good at stories. You're like really creative at stories, amazing at stories. So we have I think this is a video too that we might roll in. So let's talk about story for just a minute and what this is.
So I came in basically the year before to the Air and Space Museum, the year before the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon. I don't know how many people were in Washington, D.C. at that time, but I came in and the Air and Space Museum said, we're about to start our reconstruction of the museum. We're really busy. We're going to have to take a sort of a back.
Taking off on the Washington Monument.
It's taking off on the Washington Monument. So we said, how do we bring this story to the American public? How do we talk about Apollo in a way that makes people excited? And an employee of the museum slid a piece of paper across the desk for me, and he goes, the Saturn V rocket was about the same size as the Washington Monument.
That's awesome.
So we went with this crazy idea that we were going to launch a Saturn V rocket up the side of the Washington Monument. So the summer of 2019, we brought over 1 million people out onto the National Mall. They were happy. They were not protesting anything. We put on a 20-minute show that you can watch. It's called Go for the Moon. If you say Smithsonian, Go for the Moon, you'll be able to watch the entire 20-minute show. I cried every night I was out there. It is powerful storytelling. And if you watch the video, it's really funny because you can see people just like on the edge of their seats for the launch and the moon landing. And you say, this ended okay. It ended happily. But we brought that excitement, that stress, that pride. We brought it to the National Mall, and it was super fun.
That's amazing.
Dr. Cheers teaches video production.
I do.
I teach sustainability reporting. So many people in the room want to be communicators, whether they're filmmakers or journalists or scientists. What is your advice, having gone through all this incredibly fascinating stuff, as to how we can be better storytellers that actually connect with our audience?
Well, I think you really...
With science.
Yeah, I think the thing is you have to think about what people care about. How do you make them care about something? I'm always saying to our scientists, where's the so what? We do really incredible science, but sometimes we forget the so what. You're like, oh, I'm studying this animal or this fish or this ecosystem, and I have this really interesting result. So what? How does it relate to somebody who grew up in Ohio? How does it relate to a person from another country? How are we helping the planet? How can you bring that story and bring it to people's hearts, to what they care about, to our shared values? So this idea of the Smithsonian with our shared future, it's really thinking about how do we take Smithsonian stories about the past, about what's happening now, and really bring it to people's hearts and minds to say, this is what brings us together. And I think really trying to understand, how do we relate to people on a personal basis? How do we inspire them? How do we make them cry? How do we make them laugh? That's when we can start winning hearts and minds. I have to be able to link a somersaulting panda to why it's important to do panda conversation. If I only have the somersaulting panda, I've missed the connection back to conservation, endangered species, international diplomacy. So I have to bring those together.
Is this just amazing?
I'm inspired. I have a project I want to talk to you about. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, so good.
So speaking of partnerships and things, could maybe we have more conversations, Planet Forward, our students, about how we could work with you and Smithsonian?
I would love that because honestly, like when I took this job, I was telling my mother I was head of the Air and Space Museum, and I'm like, I'm going to be the Undersecretary for Science. And she looked at me and she was like, I didn't think the Smithsonian did science. And you're like, oh, mom. So if my own mother doesn't know that we do science, how is the public ever going to know this? And so right now, with my folks, Amy and Shelby, who are here in the room, we're really thinking about how do we bring Smithsonian science? How do we show that when the American people are investing in the Smithsonian, they're investing in the future of a better planet? How do we bring that story to the public? So I would love, love, love to work with you all.
Let's do it.
Well, we'll take you up on that.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. This is amazing.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you so much.